Tonight, we explore how science gives the voiceless a chance to speak. Cold cases, left unsolved for decades, finally cracked wide open by a single strand of DNA. Stories of heartbreak, determination, and long overdue justice. These are the real cases of killers unmasked by the smallest trace of evidence. He moved like a shadow, breaking into homes, tying up couples, whispering horrific threats before raping and murdering in the dark. California lived in fear from the 1970s to the 80s. Over 50 rapes, at least 13 murders. His identity? A mystery. They called him the East Area Rapist, then the original Night Stalker. Finally, decades later, he earned one chilling title, the Golden State Killer. In 2018, using a DNA sample from a crime scene, investigators entered his profile into a public genealogy site. Not looking for him directly, but for family. It worked. A family tree formed, and at the end of it, Joseph James D'Angelo. A former police officer, a father, a man who had hidden in plain sight. They followed him, collected his DNA from discarded trash. It matched perfectly. At 74 years old, D'Angelo was arrested. Frail, silent, but science had given voice to his victims. In court, dozens confronted him. Some spoke, others cried. He said nothing, but the DNA spoke volumes. Christy Mirak was the kind of teacher students remembered. Full of energy, compassionate, only 25. In 1992, she never showed up for school. Her principal went to her home, found the door ajar. Christy had been sexually assaulted, beaten, and strangled. The investigation went cold. Her family waited decades. Then in 2018, DNA phenotyping gave investigators a glimpse of a face. Not a photograph, but a digital sketch created from genetic markers. It led them to Raymond Rowe, a wedding DJ, local celebrity. He had entertained at school events, danced in front of children. His DNA matched. Rowe pled guilty. And Christy Mirak's family finally saw justice after 25 long years. Niles, Michigan, 1987. Roxanne Wood came home from bowling. Her husband, Terry, would find her lifeless body hours later, murdered in their kitchen. He was quickly ruled out, but leads dried up. The case faded. Still, Terry never stopped pushing. In 2022, after 35 years, DNA genealogy narrowed the suspect list. Investigators honed in on one man, Patrick Gilham. They surveilled him, collected his DNA from a cigarette he tossed. It matched. When confronted, Gilham admitted it. For 3.5 decades, he'd blended into society. Lived his life, but that single cigarette gave Roxanne the justice she'd been denied for far too long. April Tinsley was only 8. It was Easter weekend, 1988, in Fort Wayne, Indiana. She went out to play. She never came back. Her body was found in a ditch 3 days later. Then, for years, the case remained cold, until something horrifying happened. Notes appeared, scribbled threats, condoms. The writer claimed to be April's killer. He left messages near toys, on barn doors. In 2018, forensic genealogy struck again. DNA from the crime matched a discarded napkin taken from a fast food restaurant. The man was John D. Miller, a quiet local. In a taped confession, he admitted it all. April's killer, finally unmasked, 30 years later. 1974, Fort Worth, Texas. Carla Walker was 17, a cheerleader. She was on a date with her high school sweetheart when she was abducted at gunpoint from her boyfriend's car. Her body was found days later in a culvert. Beaten, raped, murdered. The case haunted the community. Her family never stopped looking for answers. In 2020, 46 years later, DNA preserved on Carla's clothing was re-examined. It led them to Glenn McCurley, a man who had once been questioned but dismissed. This time, his DNA sealed his fate. He was arrested, pled guilty. Carla's brother said, "Now, I can finally grieve. My sister can rest." Idaho Falls, 1996. Angie Dodge, 18, was found raped and murdered in her apartment. A man named Chris Tapp was convicted, but something didn't sit right. He had confessed, but his story changed under police pressure. There was no physical evidence linking him to the scene. Meanwhile, the real killer was still out there. Years later, Angie's mother teamed up with advocates and scientists. DNA testing and genealogy identified Brian Drips. He had lived across the street. In 2019, Drips confessed. Chris Tapp, after serving 20 years for a crime he didn't commit, was exonerated. One case, two victims. DNA solved a murder and set an innocent man free. DNA is more than a molecule. It's a time capsule, a silent witness that never forgets. These cold cases might have faded into history, but science pulled the truth back into the light. If these stories moved you, consider subscribing, liking, and sharing. Thanks for watching.